everyone, and welcome back to the Reset with Raven podcast, the podcast where we get real about how to rise up after disappointment, discouragement, and feelings of defeat. I'm your host, Raven M. Harris, the founder of Activate the Dream, and I am grateful that you are here and listening. Today, we have U.S. Army veteran Jevon, who at the age of 17 literally saw his life flash before his eyes after being arrested for armed robbery and facing 7 years in prison. Founder of Live, Not Loathe, and author of Own Your Kingdom, Jevon's life of overcoming adversity, depression, and PTSD is truly inspiring and exemplary of the power of the mind in shifting your reality. Welcome, Jevon.
Thank you for having me, Raven. I'm excited about the conversation. Just this platform is amazing, so I'm honored to be here.
Thank you so much. So we will hop right into it. The first thing, I was telling you right before we hit record, I've been binging your podcast all day. So Jevon
I
is
love
a
it.
pro at being on podcasts and having these conversations and really, sharing this message with us that we all need. I want you to finish this sentence for me. I was sleepwalking through life until.
Until really I had an awakening from that time you mentioned when I was facing those 7 years in prison. It really was that life was happening to me and I wasn't living. And this ties into why I named my organization Live, Not Loathe. When I was waking up, it was just so taxing on me. It was draining. I was like, I got to do this again. I had to change my mindset. I had to go from that I have to do this to I get to do this. And we talked about this before we got on live as well. And when I was in that cell, you would think that's like the worst experience ever for someone. But I truly think that God placed me in there to let me know that I was destined to do more with my life. That was not meant to be my life's path. I was not meant to be a gangster. I wasn't meant to be a thug. So he grabbed me off the street and said, listen, I'm going to give you one more chance. Wake up right now, because if you don't wake up now, you could end up sleep forever, sleep for eternity. And so I just had to get up.
You could be asleep for eternity. Talk to us about what was going through your mind, your thoughts of like, I got to get out of this situation. Or did you have this feeling like all is lost? Or did you know in your head, like, God was going to deliver you? I'm curious to know like where your head set, where your faith was. Because people will say like, oh, I'm a person of faith. And it's like, oh, okay. I feel like life will come at you and it's like, oh, really?
Now,
Yeah.
I'm gonna tell you, I grew up in Islam, right? My mom is Muslim. I actually went to, instead of a Catholic school, I went to a Islamic school. So we prayed in school, we fasted, we did all the things that Muslims do. But guess what? I didn't believe in any of it because I felt like I was forced, and I wanted to rebel against anything I was forced to do. So it wasn't until I got in that cell and I had to get on my knees and pray to God with my own words, with my own heart, that I really made that connection with God. Before I was like, why would he damn me like this? Why would he put us in this situation? I was resenting God. I really had a look at God and I was like, man, if you exist, what the hell? Like, why would you do this to anyone? Because I felt like I was in the worst of the worst situation. And that's how I got in that cell in the first place. I was tired of that situation. So I didn't have that relationship with God that people talk about early on in my life. That event really brought us closer. And I learned in that moment that I could speak to God in my own way.
As you were talking, one of the things came to my mind was this concept of train up a child. So though you were saying, and the term that came to my head was like going through the motion, or as you call it, like
Mm-hmm.
sleepwalking through life. And oftentimes, especially younger people that are forced to go to church, or it's like I'll give it like a Sunday, or if you're of a different denomination, a Saturday ritual, whatever that day of the week is, there
Right.
is often some of it what's forced down my throat and some rebellion, because it's like I'm being required to go here or to attend here, but I don't really believe it. But I think it's very interesting how when faced with a situation like this, some of that came up, some of those experiences or that teaching, or that training up a child came up for you. So you're having this prayer, and I feel like a lot of us and have been in situations where I call it, we make a deal with God. Like, God, if you get me
Mm-hmm.
out of this, like,
But how
how
many
many
of
of
us
us have
truly
made
mean
those?
it? That's the thing. It's like I had that calling and I meant it because it wasn't for me. I realized it wasn't for me. See, before that, I thought I was valueless. I thought I was just absolutely empty because I thought money was the root of value. I tied it to material possessions. I tied it to what I seen on TV. I didn't realize that the most valuable aspect of any human being is our uniqueness, right? The way we do things, no one can do it like us. So when I made that prayer and I said, "Hey, I promise to be the servant that you put me on this earth to be," I didn't know what that meant at that time. I'm 17, but I knew that he was giving me a message because that same night I had a dream that I was actually free and I was with my family, right? Which is one of the things I valued so much. So that was his way of telling me, like, "Hey, listen, this is what matters. Like, your values have nothing to do with monetary stuff, nothing to do with material possessions. It's all about what's in your heart and your mind." So I had to start realizing that. And when I got out like 2 weeks later, I was like, okay, yeah, this is crazy. This is wild. So I meant every single word, and I've been working to live by those words of being servant of God ever since I made that prayer, because I never ever want to see the look on my mom and my sister's face that I seen when I went in that visitation room. And another note is, when I went into the visitation room to see them, when I looked around, I noticed everyone looked like me. And that was one of the most depressing things that you can see when you're actually behind those walls and you see nothing but black men. That tells me that I at this time, now that I'm able to process it and I'm cognizant of what that stood for and what that meant, that told me that that was part of my purpose.
Hmm. You said, your values, and that has been, so I would say, pivotal to my life,
Mhm.
especially recently, when you start to question things. And um, part of my reset journey, seeing so many people pass away. I worked in a critical illness recovery hospital, and a lot of our patients were terminal.
Mhm.
And it was a patient in particular who looked like me, who had a birthday 3 days before me, that and was the same, yes, exact same age as me, besides those 3 days, that
Wow.
really made me start to think about my life and my livelihood, and what was I doing with my life, and what are my values. Um, and prior to this situation, I had gotten caught up in the prestige, the title, what my pay was from my salary. When I realized that stuff didn't define me, it wasn't something I really value. It was something I was taught that I should value. And when I started questioning those things, I was like, you know what? Those things aren't even important to me, because I have these things and I still have emptiness. I still lack fulfillment. So talk to us about, like, what your journey has been to discover what your values are and what's important.
You hit on a lot of solid things, Raven. And when you think about money or anything material, it's really, I do a 5 why exercise. I want to know the root cause of why it matters. Right. So if I say money, I need more money. Why? Why do I need more money? What does that bring me? And you'll find that after you do that exercise, it's what the money brings you, right? It brings you the freedom, the autonomy, the time. I work for time. I realize that time is really what you're looking for when you ask for those things, when you ask for the extra salary. You want to be able to spend time doing the things you love. And that was how I started doing this whole exercise around values and even my goal setting and prioritization. I knew that, yes, I want more money, but not for the sake of money, because money doesn't mean anything if it doesn't hold any weight on what you're trying to do. So My values are community, family, giving, charity, things like that. My values stem around really depending on other people. Because I'm a people person, right? We're naturally social creatures. I just happen to realize that when I was younger, I didn't want to speak to anyone because I was afraid to let them close. But now that I've opened up and I've done some healing upon my journey, now I love having people close to me. I love experiencing love. It took me so long to get to that point. I had a defense mechanism where when soon as someone got close enough to me where I started telling them about me, I would push them away. I would do something that just pushed them away, that made them not want to deal with me. And I realized that after therapy, and so that became one of my closest values was community, family, friendships, and really just spending that time. So that was really how I did the values assessment and understood that money wasn't part of it, like you said.
That's good. Right before we started recording, I was just having a conversation with someone who also will be a guest, and I won't steal their thunder, but we talked about meaningful relationships and how we've recognized, especially as we're getting older, how important that is to us. So when you talked about community, when you talked about your family, when you talked about being able to spend that time, it really made me think about like what is important to me,
Mhm.
meaningful relationships, and to be around people I love and to be able to experience that reciprocity of love. So that's beautiful. So we got to back up because I'm sure our listeners are wondering. So you make that deal with God. God comes through like he always
I
does.
came through.
So he comes through. Then what? What happened? What happened to the 17-year-old? What was next for you?
So, what happened was I was able to graduate, right? I graduated high school that same year, and I tried college. College didn't work out. I couldn't afford it. We forgot to do the EOP paper, so we wasn't part of the low income students. So I was looking to pay for tuition. Started falling into that same trap. Started selling, weed on campus, all the stuff, and just doing stuff. I was like, nope, I'd rather drop out. I always worked at this time. It's important to know. I always had a job, right? I was working at a grocery store or something else for steady income, but it just wasn't enough, right? So I ended up going back home to Rochester, New York, after I was going to Buffalo. And a few years went by. I decided to work 2 full-time jobs so I wouldn't go back to that life because it's tempting. That fast money is tempting when you're young and when you don't think you don't have any options. You're like, man, I need to go back to that. I need this. But I just worked 2 full-time jobs. So I didn't have time to do the bull stuff. Right. And working those 2 full-time jobs helped me to understand, like, one, that's not what I want. Again, I started realizing how important time was because years were going by, and I'm like, man, I'm getting older, and I ain't got no money in my bank still, even though I'm working these jobs. And so I decided to join the military. I decided at 22, like, I have some schooling under me because in between that time, I was going to community college and just trying to get some credits. And I ended up joining the military, and that's really where I learned my power. I learned to tap into something I hadn't yet seen within me. That was leadership. That was the camaraderie, collaborating. When you come from the hood as a young black man, they teach you the opposite. They teach you that you need to be competing with the other man. They teach you that vulnerability is weakness. I learned the exact opposite. I learned that vulnerability is strength because I had to look to my left and my right to survive. I learned that collaboration is key to success because if you can't depend on someone else, you can only go so far. We don't know everything and we don't have all the skills necessary to thrive in this life. And it's like that on purpose. It's meant for you to go find a network and establish bonds and be genuine about it, not just using folks, not just using people. And some of those people I've met in the military are still some of my greatest friends today. So once I did that and I started realizing these things, I started thinking about how I could utilize that. People would tell me over the years, like, hey, you're great at hyping people up, getting them to identify their strengths and getting the job done, right, in the military. I wanted to do something like that, but I didn't want to just do motivational speaking. So a couple years down the road, after a few deployments, when I was like, hey, I'm tired of this, I'm ready to get the hell out, I found coaching. Now, I initially started with life coaching, where I focused on, helping people design a life they don't need a vacation from, so to speak. And along that journey, I realized something. I realized I needed help myself because I had some unresolved issues that I needed to address. After my last deployment to Afghanistan in 2017, I came home. Probably like 6 months later, I started having super bad dreams. I started just feeling super down. I didn't enjoy anything about life. I felt like I was regressing, going back to that kid that felt valueless, right? I felt empty. You mentioned that, Raven. And when I felt that way, I called my sister. It was one of the darkest days. I literally had suicidal ideations. I was like, yo, I don't want to feel this way anymore. I don't know if I could do this anymore. And she was just on the phone listening. She didn't say anything. She just listened. And I can understand how much pain that was. For the second time, I caused this type of pain to her, but it was different this time because she knew she only needed to say a couple things. Go get help. Now, I wouldn't have heard those words if I never opened up to be vulnerable. So I got help. And once I got help, I realized the power of compassion along the way. Because, collaborating, all that stuff, it's a subset of compassion, but you don't really get to that higher level of being empathetic and all those other things, because you're still competing with the unknown and the trauma and all those other things that you had that you haven't let go of yet until you do the work. So it's just been a long, long journey, and I'm grateful for every step.
I'm grateful that you shared that with us, and so grateful that you had someone in your life that you had that relationship with, and that comfort and that love
Mm-hmm.
that you could reach out. You know, right now I feel like, and I don't know if it's more televised than before, or there really is a rise. I think I've seen statistics and data say there are definitely a rise, and there's definitely a rise in people needing prescription medication for depression and anxiety, as well as PTSD. And I really think there needs to, we need to hold space for that. We need to talk about that, and talk about like the thoughts that people have in their head, or the pain that people are going
Mm-hmm.
through, and not feeling comfortable enough to talk about it or having anyone to talk to. And I feel like just now, and maybe the past couple of years, is it becoming less and less like taboo. People to
Right.
talk about, hey, I go to a therapist, or hey, like I saw someone say the other day, like, I love God and I've battled depression. Like, and being okay with saying that and verbalizing that for anybody else that is sitting somewhere feeling the same thing. Because I know, just especially in the culture and in the environment I was raised in, it was like, just pray it away or don't
Yep.
talk about it.
Mm-hmm.
And when you're marinating and have all of that trapped inside of you, that's got to be terrible. That's got to be terrible to wrestle, with your thoughts. And one of the things that is very important for me with this podcast, with this platform, this conversation, is to make sure that people don't have to suffer in silence, that
Right.
we have conversation around feelings and that people are experiencing, because you're definitely seeing more and more, especially I feel like on social media, of like, hey, I'm experiencing this is how I feel. And opening the conversation, and like being, even just being a listening ear. Thank God for your sister to be able to be there for you with something like that. I'm curious to know, for anyone else that's listening and they're thinking, I need to work on my mindset. I need to work on my healing. What's something that they can do to incorporate, or incorporate in their daily life? Something they can start now. If it's like, what, I'm having my own, where I feel like I'm just not myself, or I'm not having the mental state that I'd like to be in. What would you suggest for someone listening right now?
For sure. Those words, go get help. But when you get help, understand that medication, it could have its place, but I'm of the mind that it's actually not as effective as we think it is, right? It's big pharma is going to get their money, right? So they're going to market it and say whatever they want. I was on sertraline, right, which is Zoloft, and I got off it because after doing research, I realized that that's temporary. You literally have to stay on that thing because once you get off it or you miss a dose, how you're not taking it how you're supposed to, you're gonna have to, for one, the initial symptoms could be terrible, right? And then not after that, if you don't stay on it, you're gonna go right back to that baseline, that negative where you were at. So it's actually studies show that it's more effective to try other things like EMDR, which is a type of therapy, cognitive behavioral therapy, acceptance therapy, all these different types of things. And that's actually more effective long term than taking medication. Now, of course, there are some people who just can't afford to do that. If you have like schizophrenia or certain other things, bipolar disorder may be another one. So you have to get professional opinion on that. But just make sure that you're doing what's best for you long term, and have the 360 support system. This is a concept that I came up with because of the military. We talk about 360 security, where we cordon off an asset, put it in the middle. So no matter where an adversary comes, we can see it up, down, around, through whatever they try, unless they come under the ground and up, we can see it. So we can protect it effectively. And it's layers to it. So that's what we want to do in our lives too, when it comes to making sure that you're addressing these and being able to talk to people. Have people around you who inspire you, who support you, who uplift you, who allow you to be your authentic self. You don't have to be anyone else, and allow yourself to be that. That 360 support system starts with you. You're the center. So you have to allow yourself the grace. You have to forgive yourself. You have to show gratitude to you, show compassion to you. And then once you love yourself and can get to that point where you can accept love, now things start looking up, because it's really an inside out job. One of the things I learned from myself was that I didn't love myself enough to allow people to love me. And that's what a lot of us struggle with. We don't feel like we're deserving of that. We say, for instance, that language can come up saying, I don't want to be a burden. Well, first, that's wrong. You're not a burden at all. That's what family and friends are for. Right? They're not for just to be there in your good times. They are for your worst times, seeing you at your worst so they can help you get back to your best. And that's how we have to start thinking about things. Like, we do not have to go through these things silently. Stress is the number one killer, and it's a silent killer if you let it be. In order to alleviate that, you have to share the burdens that you feel. We're not meant to carry those alone.
That's good. That's good. Especially about that stress part. Oh, I mean, and if you allow it, stress can infiltrate you from so
For
many
sure.
different angles. I recall a time where I felt so stressed that I felt it all over my body. Like, I remember I would come in and my stomach would start hurting. My skin would start
Mm-hmm.
breaking out, and it was just stress. And when I left that environment, all of that went away. And that just shows you how much. Actually, speaking of that, the most recent shooting at the school in near San Antonio, I remember the husband of one of the teachers passed away from grief, from a
Yep.
broken heart, had a heart attack. So that is so real, so true,
For
about
real.
how we really have to. I call it protect your energy, protect your peace, and it's a daily activity, a daily focus to do that. We touched on it, but I definitely want to not just drive by it. Tell us about Live Not Loathe. What does that name mean? How did you come up with that? And what do you do through Live Not Loathe?
For sure. Thank you. Good question. So I came up with Live Not Loathe while I was deployed in Afghanistan. The concept. So Live Not Loathe is a transformation. And that's why I named it that, where people loathe life. We spoke on it earlier a little bit, as you said. When people loathe life, they can hate themselves, they can hate their circumstances, and they can just be trapped in it, stuck in it. And they feel like it's a permanent situation. They feel like that's just the way things are going to be. There's nothing I can do about it. You start to lose hope. You start to be in a feeling of perpetual despair. Well, I'm all about getting people out of that. Right. So I want them to flip it on his head, go over that knot into living again, get agency over your life. Understand that as long as you have breath in your body and a sound mind, you have the power to change what's going on in your life. Doesn't matter where you are physically. We've seen people in prison completely change their lives and make great contributions, right? We've seen people in impoverished cities and towns and countries and war-torn places make great contributions. So it's really all about here. It's really all about the mindset. And once you realize the power of the mind and start getting it from that place of lack and scarcity to that place of growth and abundance, now we can play the game. Right now we can have some fun in life. Now we can get that joy back. Now we can get some of that zest back for life. And that's what Live Not Loathe is about. And my tagline is helping business leaders and entrepreneurs go from distress to success in their life and business. And the reason why I wanted it to be that is because entrepreneurs, we're some of the most stressed folks, right? You know, Raven, we're some of the most stressed people, but we feel like we have to go, 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 go. And a lot of us never take time to pause. And this is people just, it doesn't even have to be a business leader, entrepreneur, everyone. Taking a pause, taking a step back and saying, okay, let me assess this situation. Let me see where I can start taking away some of this time because I'm just doing busy work, and where I can start putting it towards the things that's going to move me closer to my goals. And even a step further back than that, what are my goals? Are they aligning with my values, which we talked about earlier? What are my values, right? So you visualize success, what it means to you, your definition, and then you're working back in reverse engineering so you can understand what your next steps need to be, and then understand what the negative anchors you're holding on to. What are you tolerating in your life that you can let go of so you can feel a little freer and start really moving and propelling forward in life and in business?
That's good. That's good. And that is a great segue to, in this limited series of Let the Men Talk. And you talked about fun, joy, zest, propelling forward. That's a great, great segue and a great close to our series. And we ask, what is important to you right now as a man? What are you focused on? What's propelling you forward?
Man, I like that question. I love it. So what's propelling me forward is legacy. I want my legacy to be one of compassion. I want mine to be one of love, and one that doesn't just focus on me. One that's touching thousands of lives, changing thousands of lives, waking thousands of people up so they can go ahead and feel empowered to go for what they want in life. That's what propels me forward.
That's good. That's good. And is that in through your work? Is that in through the legacy that you leave through your family? Is that in the legacy? You are also an author of a book. How do you define legacy?
Everything, all it to me, I embody what my company is. I am my company, right? So that all ties together. My personal and professional, it's all one, right? Everything I do, I'm not just telling people to do it. I'm not just saying this is what it is. It's what I've gone through. It's what I've lived through. Every single piece of adversity, every triumph, every success, every failure goes into what we're sitting here talking about today, goes into the book, goes into every piece of content I put out there, every coaching session I have, because that's all a part of the legacy. That's all about part of changing the narrative, changing the dynamics of what people are going through in today's society. I want also to say, like, don't let social media fool you. You need to define your own definition of success and go at your pace. Understand that it is not something that's going to happen overnight. Those people you see saying that, a lot of them, you got to ask, where are they now? Because it wasn't true success. Anybody could look successful, but are you truly successful?
That's good. That's good. You said I embody my company. And earlier you said I get the job done. So high
Yeah.
executor, high executor. So before I ask my final question, let all of our listeners and viewers know how they can connect with you. How can they find you online?
So everywhere on social media, Live Not Loathe. That's LIVENOTLOATHE. And my website is the same, livenotloathe.com. You can grab the book, apparel, book a coaching session, whatever. And I also offer free initial sessions. So anyone who's interested, go ahead and book that call.
Great, great. And our final question is, what is the greatest lesson you've learned in your reset journey?
The greatest lesson I've learned in my reset journey is to give myself grace, to let myself make mistakes, and to allow myself to look for the lessons in those mistakes.
Perfect, perfect. Give yourself grace. I am very appreciative of you. This was wonderful.
Thank you. Thank you, Raven. I had a great time.
Awesome, awesome. All right, everybody, get agency over your life. The most valuable aspect of any human being is our uniqueness. Vulnerability is strength, collaboration is key. Collaborate with us. Share this episode with someone. You never know whose life this may change or help to reset. For everyone who's listening or watching, let us know what resonated with you. We really want to hear from you. Until next time, remember, a reset is always available to you.